go.
Any new projects?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron.
No, go ahead, Rishi.
I was saying I did post it in the group, but I don't know if everybody read that. We closed on a new home. It's an upper fixer here. It's in Prospect Heights. We'll be using that as our primary residence. And we're working with Wendy. So the experience has been really great so far for all of you guys who know that. Thanks for sharing the contact.
Awesome.
It's been moving at a really nice pace, and we're pretty much almost done. I think we'd probably be moving somewhere around December. Well, December 25th is Christmas, so nobody's going to be around in that time. But we wanted to move in that time, so maybe early Jan is what we're looking forward. So yeah, that was big news on my
with
side.
the plumbing concern with it didn't have a clean out. Was that the property?
Yeah, so actually the clean out was actually there. The plumbers had no idea what they were doing. The folks who came because before I even called the guy you mentioned, right? Somebody else was showing up just the other day, and then they came out and said, "Hey, your clean out is right there," and the clean out. And they left a big flag there next time. Look here, guys.
Clean right here.
Right here.
That's a relief.
Yeah.
That's
That's a relief. But there was still a leaking pipe in there, which we had not noticed. So we still had to spend a lot of money. Like it costs like $3,000 to replace the cast iron with PVC.
Is Wendy taking care of that?
Huh?
Is Wendy taking care of all of that?
Oh no, Wendy's not doing the plumbing side. She recommended somebody, but then we also worked with a few other people. But
Cool.
it's a mix and match of everything.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom.
What's up? Good to see you.
Not much. Good to see you too. So you can talk at 2:30 if that works, but I guess I'll give an introduction then or now, whatever works. But yeah, I mean, if we want to, I guess we'll do breakout rooms after that. So just so everybody knows, we won't be like kind of sitting in this kind of a giant group the whole time. But we figured Tom will talk at like 2:30ish, and then we can go ahead and break out after that. Some kind of however Chris wants to do it.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. And thanks, Tom, for coming by. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excited, guys. Nice work getting this little group together coming out of that Midwest conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was inspiring, and a lot of us kept staying in touch afterwards, and we said, hey, let's just turn this into something.
Yeah.
By the way, Tom, love the podcast. I've been listening to you guys regularly. You and Mark.
Thank you. That's our little baby. So please help promote that. We'll have I'll have like a flip or something like, really good happen. And then like Mark will text me and be like, hey, we got another $200 sponsorship. And I'll be like more pumped about that than like something that's like monetarily like 100x what. Like we get the podcast is our baby. So we care about that one a lot.
It's crazy.
We appreciate the kind words.
Like you guys are reaching people like across the world too, which is insane.
Yeah, it's funny. And then the best part is Mark gets like butthurt over like, hey, we only had like one download in Ukraine. That means the guy didn't come back. And I was like, well, he probably wasn't even looking for us. Like he gets mad when he only sees like a small amount of downloads because that means the person or people didn't come back. So it's like, well, Mark, like, I don't know if that was our target market. Like I don't know if this is something we should be getting upset over. Like,
have you been getting people reaching out to you from different countries and stuff? Because I remember you mentioning that there are people in all over the world kind of watching that.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's like expat or if it's like troops, but like we do have like people, and like the numbers go up. It's a small portion. Like to give you a rough idea, it's like 80% like Chicago and Chicagoland, and then another, I'll call it like 15% is like California and New York, and like what you would expect, like out of state investors. And then like the rest is just like spread across like randomness. Like you can tell like in certain states, like in Wyoming, we have one dude who listens to us because every week it goes up by like one. So it's like one dude sitting in his cabin in Wyoming who likes us. And then same thing in like Europe, like they're either like, and I know Bree Schmidt has a bunch of clients out there. So I think it could be some of her people. But in certain countries we have like a couple hundred downloads and it's like, oh, cool. It's probably like 5 people. Right, because like there's if every one of them listens to 30 episodes or whatever, it's not that it's not that many people, but it's still it's just funny to see like that there are people out there that like that interested in Chicago real estate.
Yeah.
Is it more beneficial if I'm using, let's say, like Apple Podcasts to view it, or just using Spotify? Because I normally.
So what you guys should do is just all download them all, then delete them all, then download them all.
Yeah, I could
Then
write
tell
a
your mom about it.
Yeah, tell you, get your parents, get some bored high school kids to do it.
Is that how like the algorithm works? Like you have to like actually download it onto your phone for it to count towards like some sort of ranking or anything like that?
I honestly don't know. So we get, I believe if you're subscribed, every Thursday you'll count as a download, like when the new one releases. I believe that's how it works.
I'm gonna do it with Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that, man. This has already been a beneficial meeting for me. So this is great.
You're welcome.
Tom signed off now.
Yeah. So, but it's been funny. It's been cool to see. There are people like outside of the US who care about Chicago real estate. So all the people like in the US who poo-poo it, it's like, oh, well, there's other people who do care about it.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of other articles and everything that I read, people are just when it comes to Chicago real estate, they are like, we don't know what's going to happen with the state's government and stuff, and whatever they want to say about the real estate. But it's good to know that there's a lot of interest around there too, in other parts of the country and the world.
Yeah, I think like my take on it, for whatever that's worth, is like it's real hard to syndicate in Chicago, because when you syndicate like a large building, you have to be out in 5 years. Like there's a plan, the investors are due their money back, and like things have to work in a certain time frame. And I think that's where Chicago gets a little rough, because you don't know what taxes are going to do. Like there are a lot of unknowns we're walking into, but like if you can expand that horizon and be cool with 7 years or 10 years, there's a lot of goodies here. And I think the other thing too is like these 2 to 4 units, like the rest of the country doesn't have as many as we do. So like I know that's probably like the bulk of like what you guys do. That's what I do too. Like I love buying 3 units. Like they're great. They're great returns, and like there's not a lot of opportunity in other parts of the country to do that. But on those larger like 50 unit buildings, it's a tough market. Having 50 tenants who can like pull themselves together in a very tenant friendly place there's a lot of risk you're taking on there. So I can understand like the bigger syndicators why they stay out, but like, man, for a lot of other strategies, it's a great market.
Hey, Tom, how did you get started with Bigger Pockets?
I just found them. I don't remember what it was, but like somehow I came across them, whether through like another podcast or something, just like everyone else. Like I don't have a cool story. I'm sorry.
I'm disappointed.
Boring like everyone else. You know what though? I'll make up one now. I'll get that in my arsenal.
There you go.
You started with like note investing, right?
I got my start I was doing funding for someone I knew who was doing flips. So like I'm probably a little older than most of you, and had a decent career and still have a good career. I call it the real estate world and the real world. And then was looking for like, hey, I want to get started in real estate. I went through like my LinkedIn, found someone who I used to work with, who I'm not like close friends with. It's Blake McCrade. If any of you guys have bought a property from him, Express Property Solutions. He's a big time wholesaler here in Chicago. And I was like, hey man, like you seem to be doing this. I want to get started. And he's like, well, here's like, I can help you, but also like I have immediate needs. Like if you want to partner on some things. So I was basically the money guy on the first couple of deals and making a nice return. I was like, oh, this is great. Then I saw what he was making and I was like, whoa, like I got to learn more about this. Cause like you're making a lot of money on these flips. And that's when I like dove in, like started getting the book, started doing BP and like what everyone else does.
Nice.
Did you also say you served as like a limited partner in a syndication too, or is it primarily just the lending side on those flips that you started out with?
I've been on the limited partner side, just like here's your check and sit back and get a return. I'm currently not in any of those right now, just because like I'm trying to scale. Like I want my funds used for my stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, it looks like we have a decent showing here, for sure. So I guess any like I guess tips or anything in general during COVID that you found that have been useful with all this, with doing so many flips? I'll start asking you questions now.
Oh man, I wasn't prepared for this. No, I think like I'm decently aggressive in the market. I still feel there's a lot of opportunity. I will preface that though with like, you got to plan for the worst thing to happen, right? There's just, we don't know, like anyone who's telling you what's going to happen in 2021 is, they don't know. I don't know. So like when you're running ARVs, when you're running things, you got to be, can I live with this worst case scenario? Maybe I don't want this worst case scenario, but can I live with it and like justify this investment off of it? So like, I would say like not doom and gloom, but like you have to have that like cautionary in your back tail, or in your back pocket, I should say. We doubled down in February and March. Like if you can like just think about like in March, like everything stopped. Like I don't know if you guys were like in the middle of a purchase, but like if you were in the middle of a refi, it stopped. If you were like right around St. Patty's Day, everything stopped. And like at that point, like my GC and I were basically like, well, is this 08? Like this is where we should probably triple down. And so like we made a lot of purchases in April, like kind of betting a little bit, and that turned out to be very well for us. I wouldn't say that's like that was more of like hey, like the opportunity is right in front of us. We're not seeing that now. Like the market's like it's much more competitive. There's probably like a 6-week period though where it was everyone was like going into a shell. So the reason I'm rambling about this is like if something like that happens again, we have another incident, or we have the Fed's hike rates, or something happens and the world just stalls for a week or two, like that's where I would make a move. Because people tend not to prepare for that worst case scenario. And then when it hits, they tend to overreact. So you need to be cautious leading up to it. But then when it happens, like you almost want to be on the other side of the table saying, all right, who's overreacting here and how can I exploit it?
Mhm.
It's interesting because like a lot of people were saying that the market more or less remained hotter than ever during that time. Did you kind of see those opportunities in the form of like a price drop, or?
Go look in March and April. Like you're absolutely right. Like once everything kind of got figured out, but I don't know if you guys remember, like there was 2 weeks where we didn't know if we were going to be able to do rehabs, right? We didn't know if real estate was going to be an essential when they're still figuring that all out. Like we were like, holy shit, we have all these hard money loans, and like, what if we can't do the job? Like we're not legally allowed to go into the building. Like there was like that 2 to 3 weeks of pure panic, and like lenders didn't come back around until probably like end of April. Like there was, and then the market just like took off like crazy, and no one really knew why. But like there was that like moment in time where things were, I wish I would have like done more, like all of us looking back on it, but like, oh man, we should have probably done more.
Mhm.
Yeah, I actually had a period where I was like in the middle of my rehab, and the city just stopped doing inspections, so we were just stuck. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna like not do these anymore for a while and see what happens. So I was just like stuck waiting for them to come inspect the house. So yeah, it was like frozen for a little bit there. That was weird.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I guess like my rambling point is like be cautious. Like things are gonna, like, we don't know what's gonna happen, so you got to prepare both ways. And you can't be banking an investment banking on the good side. You got to be okay with it on the bad side. But then like my flip side of that is, if and when things start to move a little bit, don't go into a shell. Like I know that's like the normal, that's like going to be your normal reaction. Like that's probably the time where you should be active and being ready to make a move.
During that time, like how did you take advantage of those opportunities? Were you using your own capital? Were you using, because I know like wasn't hard money kind of going to a shell a little bit during that time too? Like how were you?
Hard money got tough. Even Renovo, they went down to like 60% loan to cost.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you needed 300K to, like, let's say the job was 300K, you're buying for 200 and putting 100K of rehab into it, they would give you a loan for, what is that, 60% of 250? Is that like 250, 240? So like you needed 60K plus contingency plus the holding cost. Like you probably needed 100K of your own money to get that deal done. And that's like not a big, that 300K in Chicago doesn't get you too far. So like they went to a shell. So yeah, there's personal funds there. I think the other thing that was a benefit to us is, so a lot of the flips we do, we'll buy something for like in a nice north side neighborhood, we'll buy for like 300, put in like $125, $150, and sell for like $650.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we'll be in the same markets where that house, new construction, 3,000 square foot McMansion goes for like 1.2. And we're competing against that, but we're keeping the same square footage. So you're going to get like the nicest finishes, the new construction finishes, but you're going to have an 1,800 square foot house instead of 3,200, right? And you're going to get it for 300K less or 400K less than what you would if it was the brand new construction McMansion.
Yeah.
And so we compete against developers a lot. Like they're almost looking at it as a lot, and they're going to tear it down and they're going to build this thing. Where we're looking at it is we're going to keep the structure and try not to add square footage and add a different product that's not out there in the market. If you want to live in North Center, like you can't find anything that's flipped for 600-700K, and we're trying to serve that market. So we actually pulled a lot off the MLS because these developers just went away. They literally like disappeared for like a 3-month period. Like we were literally, you can look at some of our flips we did. Like we did so 3317 North Whipple was one we did. Right now we have a few under contract: 3710 West Dickens, 4833 West Hutchinson, 7116 West Schreiber, 2218 West Foster. These are all pulled off the MLS. Now, like you got to make a decent amount of offers to make the MLS work for you, but like people like in that little 6-week period, people went away, and then sellers were also thinking like, oh, I probably do have to drop 50K, right? Like they didn't know like the market was going to pick right back up. So like I get the point is like there's the period in time that where like you can really make some moves there. And I part of the, I know Alex asked me to underwrite some deals. I'm going to show like 2 deals. What I didn't want to do is show up today and show you guys like, hey, here's a great off market deal my VA got me, and everyone here looks and be like, well, that's great, Tom. Like, how does that help me? Like, so like I'm going to show 2 deals that are like one off the MLS and one that was like blasted out from like 3 different wholesalers that anyone here could have seen. So I want to make like my point is I want to make like real tangible ones that like anyone can have, that you don't need like some direct marketing campaign to get.
That sounds perfect.
That's awesome. I feel like when we scour the MLS, we feel like we're looking through scraps that wholesalers have already gone through, and more experienced investors with access to like cash and capital have picked up, and we just pick up the scraps that nobody else wants. And I feel like we're just trying to make it work. But it'd be nice to see these deals that you're going to present to us.
You're not inaccurate in saying that, right? Like it is tough. I don't want to sit here and be like, yeah, just go on the MLS and things will find it. Like I will say if you're flipping, it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're flipping single family homes in the north side, like you can almost make a living off the MLS. Like there's almost like a deal a month to be had. When you're talking like these 2 to 4 units, there's so many house hackers out there. There's so many people that just like want to own something in Chicago like that it's just like it's much more competitive, and it's still very challenging. That said, though, I feel like there's still opportunity. Like we still make offers on stuff on the MLS.
Yeah, I feel like there's a niche spot based where like it's too much of rehab for a house hacker to do unless they're willing to do an FHA 2 or 3K, but it's not enough for somebody who's like really trying to like scale a large business or a developer. And that's kind of a decent spot to be in.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's my hunch.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I almost like personally, I almost have better luck with 2 units because house hackers, that's almost non-house hackable, if that's a verb, right? Like you guys almost need, like if you're a house hacker, you almost need 3 or 4 units. You can do it with the 2 unit, but like you're already living in one, it's going to get tough, right? So like I almost find like the 2 units I have better luck with if I'm going to take it and try to make an equity spread because there's less competition there.
Yeah, very good point. And you don't have to worry about the self-sufficiency test if you are looking to do that as a house hack, if people are interested in that. I know, Aaron, you've kind of had experience with the self-sufficiency test.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
I feel like that's that was like one of the most frustrating parts too, is because it seemed like, at least on the north side, it was very difficult to find one that would pass the self-sufficiency test. And interestingly, it seemed like it was harder to find 3 units and 4 units that would pass the self-sufficiency test over like a 2 unit for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just because of the price point relative to the rents that you could generate from all of those or what, but that seemed to be my experience when I was looking at the time.
Yeah, in Chris, it only applies for 3 and 4 units, so not a
right.
duplex. So.
So Tom, you actually mentioned one of those things that helps bring you deals is like you use a VA. Is that what you're saying? Like a virtual assistant?
Yeah, I have 2 virtual assistants who make calls for me.
Gotcha. Do they just do cold calls, or like, I guess how do you kind of make use of them?
Yep. No, it's straight cold calls. So I can go into like a lot of detail, but at the highest level, You can download a list from List Source. You can do driving for dollars. And if you're not familiar with like List Source or some of these other competitors that they have, I always use List Source. I don't know, the other ones could be better, so check them out for yourself. But like in List Source, you can draw an actual map. So instead of just being like, I want 60641, you can say like, these are the streets I want it to curve around here, and I want to avoid this street. And then you pull in your parameters. I want it to be a 2 to 4 unit. I want the owner not to have refinanced since 1995, right? Like someone who's sitting there on equity, someone who hasn't moved in the last 30 years. And you get all that information, and it'll spit back whatever 400 units or 400 buildings, and then you have the name. You can be like, hey, either out of state or non-owner occupied, or however you want to however you want to frame that up. And then I have them scrub to get the actual phone numbers, and then I have them make calls for me. And it's not a high success rate. Like it's almost always no. But they said I'll probably get I'll call it like 2 to 3 conversations a day. Because it's different when you call a single family home. You call someone's house, they're like, get out of here.
Right.
And if someone called you to sell your house, like I would hang up on them. When you're calling someone who has a 2 unit, you're going to catch someone who has someone late on rent, who just got their new tax bill. Like you're going to catch people like, all right, for the right price, I'll listen to you. Right. So I have a lot of those conversations. And out of those conversations, maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 15 is like, ooh, like this number might actually make it work. Like, let's go walk this thing. So it's not a very I'll call it high effective system, but it's such a low cost that if they burn through a couple hundred leads to get me 20 conversations to get me to walk 2 buildings, and then you make 50 grand off of the 1 building, take down, it pays for itself. And then a lot more, but it's very intensive. It's not they churn through a lot to make it happen.
But at least you're leveraging, your VA's time and not necessarily, your own driving for dollars and all that stuff.
Yeah. I still, if I go see a house, I still try to get 3 or 4 addresses though. I probably have personally put in a couple hundred units of driving for dollars. I'll never I don't have time to just be like, hey, this is my Sunday. I have 4 kids. I'm not going to go out and be like, hey, honey, I'm going to look at properties for 8 hours. But I will if I go to a showing, I will try to get 2 or 3, 2 to 3 houses on the block or close by or whatever. I mean, and then it just adds up, man. You do that for every week for 2 years, and all of a sudden you have a couple hundred homes where it's all right, these are ones I have personally looked at, where you're gonna hit on some of those. Alex, the one I was talking to you about, that was one I just drove by when I was looking at a different property, the one on Cornelia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's someone I drove by. I was like, ooh, this is one that might work here.
And you just looked up the address, then told your VA to go call them?
Actually, this one, yes. Basically, you look up the address, so you can do a couple different things. You have a whole conversation on this, but so let's say you see a property, it's 123 Main Street, and you're like, ooh, wow, this is a 3 unit, and it's still got the old awning on it. It's still, grass is up there. It's got the, the handwritten for rent sign that just looks terrible. So there's 2 easy things. One, if there's a for rent sign like that, just call it every single time.
Interesting.
A lot of them will also have property managed by, legally, you're supposed to have that if you're not a living owner. And if it has the management company, the management company's not going to help you, but it might just say managed by Tom Shallcross, right? Just call the guy. Hey, saw you own this building, saw you manage it. I have funds I'm looking to buy. Were you potentially putting this on the market at any time in the near future? The guy's not going to tell you to F off. He's going to tell you, hey, I'm not. Good luck. Or he's going to say actually, I was thinking about it, and maybe you get a conversation out of the thing. But let's say that does neither of those scenarios happen. So then you can go to the Cook County Recorder. So here, I don't want to give you the wrong URL, so let me type it in. You want to just do an example here?
We can do that.
Sure.
Are you guys seeing my screen or no?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you go here, cookcountyrecorder.org, right? Type in the address. This isn't the address I was looking for, but it's auto-populated, so I must have looked for it. Cornelia? Yeah, there it is. Here you go. And it'll show you. All right, they had a mortgage in 98 for $65K. That thing's paid off. Maria Sajic.
Wow.
We had a transfer on death instrument, which so it looks like who's the grant. So this is now in Diane, Grace, and Eva are the 3 owners of this property. And then you go to True People Search and look them up. So you can look up by address. So you can see we don't have anyone who lives in the address here. Like that last name wasn't any of these, right?
Right.
Or was it Diane Quigley, Eva Marie? All right, so you have no luck there. So then you can look up the name. What were the names we had here? So Eva Marie McGoey. This is the sister I've talked to like 10 times. So I have her phone number. I can validate if this is correct or right. So this has got to be her. Like this is a pretty specific name, right? That's where she lives. If you want to send her direct mail, there's the phone numbers. Who else is she related with? And then here's like, this is a ton of names, but you can validate, do these names also show up there? And this is a pretty complicated one. Usually it's just like one person, you look up the address and they're there.
Is True People Search free? I remember looking at this once and it said like you have to pay for certain like information and
This
stuff.
is free.
Okay.
Now what you should do before you go nuts on this thing, like I have everything run through Call Tools, and Call Tools will scrub it for you to make sure they're on the do not call list. So like that's like you would probably all get telemarketer calls anyways. Like if you want to call like 1 or 2 properties, I'd say go for it. But if you're really going to do this and make calls, like you should do it correctly and like run it through an actual like Podio or one. If you start doing this with like a call system, they will scrub it automatically for you. Because you don't want to just be fucking calling people like crazy and getting a bunch of pissed off people. That's not good for them or you.
Yep.
But yeah, you can take it and so here, like I'll show you. So let me see. This is just driving for dollars from like seeing properties. I love Avondale and Hermosa. I mean, there's a ton of people here. And then I put this all in the Podio, which is a CRM that costs like $10 a month. And that's how we scrub everything and run it. But before I do that, this is all done by the VA. They'll go in there, they'll see like what do they owe. I want to know what they owe, right? Because they owe like $600K, or if they refied in 2018, there's probably not a deal there, even if they want to make a deal. There's nothing to happen. But get that, get their information, get the phone numbers, get a mailing address if it's different, any notes, and then add it into Podio. And then through Podio, we scrub everything and make our calls and so forth.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, and how do you choose when the VA decides to hand it over to you? Do they like kind of like if somebody says they're interested in talking more, then they decide to like tell you, hey, like this person's interested?
Yeah. So basically, what we want to do is, hey, listen, have you thought about selling it all? And especially if you're calling owners right now, most people will say yes, right? Like if you called me right now on my 6 unit, I'd be like, I'll listen to this guy, right? Like there's like, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. People are open to a conversation. And so, so yeah, like it's just that simple. And then I'll jump, what I have them do, if the person is like, yes, we do want to talk about it. Then I say, okay, like get these questions answered. And it could be like, how many units? Are there tenants there? What are they paying? Are they responsible for the utilities? Have you done any upgrades? Like I want all that information going into it so I can be prepared. And then it ends with, it sounds like you've thought about selling. What was the number you would put it on the market for? And usually they're going to throw out some crazy ass, like, $200K too much type number, but at least it gets the frame of reference of like, okay, this guy's insane. At least I know that going into it. The other thing too is if they're busy, if they can't, whatever, I still have them kick it over to me. And then they'll say, hey, is it okay if Tom texts you? And I can just shoot them a text instead of having to jump on a call and be like, hey, listen, like I'm looking to buy by the end of the year. If you're serious about a conversation, would love to talk to you. And then the ball's like in their court. Like then if they call back, they probably do have a need. Like they probably have a tenant not paying, or they probably are looking to eventually get down to Florida or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you put in your numbers however much it would cost to kick out a tenant using cash for keys or something.
Correct.
Very interesting.
That's awesome. All right, I guess you should probably shift gears now. We're at 2:30. Tom, if you're ready, if you to go ahead and share your screen for your presentation, I think now is a good time to start.
All right, let's do this. I will. I feel like I'm talking a lot, so I apologize.
Great value, so thank you.
That's so you try it, and you're like, this sucks. Do you guys see the actual like slideshow now? Did I do this right? Or do you see this?
Yeah, yeah, we see the slideshow now.
All right, I got a monitor, guys. This is brand new for me. All right, cool. So this should take, I think this is going to take like 30, 40 minutes. I'm not looking at the chat, so just interrupt me while I'm talking, right? Like I'd like for you guys to ask questions. This is also like you can become much more confident in making offers. So like, I think just interrupt, or if you want to put in the chat and Chris or Alex, just tell me if someone's got a question.
You bet. We'll keep an eye out for it.
Awesome.
All right, cool. So we're gonna walk through 2 deals. Before doing that though, I don't want to turn this into some like giant like goal setting exercise, but I want to call out, like, you have to know what you want before you actually go and start making offers. Because what a house hacker wants and what someone who's looking to do like a 200K rehab want are completely 2 different projects, and they're going to look at things through different lens. So I do want to spend like 10 minutes here just talking about that and defining like what you actually want. So I'll start with just a general question of, if I were to ask you, like, what is a good deal, right? Very loaded, very, very high level question. But like, if I picked on someone here, like, what would you say is a good deal? Who wants to speak up?
I guess if I'm trying to buy something and rent it out, and I've done turnkeys before. So if, let's say, just for the heck of it, I'm going to talk about turnkeys and not a rehab. If I was doing a turnkey, somewhere around 13 to 15% of cash on cash return is something what something that seems good to me.
Okay.
And if I'm doing a rehab, then I haven't done that and haven't rented out a rehab yet, so I wouldn't probably know, but I would definitely look for a higher number, somewhere closer to the 30s if possible. If that is after the refi, of course, but I may be wrong here because I've never done one. But that's, I guess, something what I was looking for.
Okay, and like, I guess, why the cash on cash metric?
The cash on cash metric is primarily because what I'm trying to do is figure out a way to replace my income first, so that I can jump full time into real estate and not have to worry about having a full time job. I guess that's one of the only reasons I picked that metrics.
Okay, and so there's no right or wrong answer. That is an awesome answer, right? If that's what you want to do, and you want to replace your actual monthly income, then cash on cash is probably the most important metric you can look at, right? You can have a huge equity spread on a deal and increase your net worth, but if the goal is to, hey, I need monthly income, that, you're not shopping in the right place there. Who else? Someone else speak up here.
So probably I would say DCR more than 1.3, so that the banks and subsequent loans will be easier.
It's coming in now. One more time.
I'm saying the debt to coverage ratio is more than 1.33%, 1.33, so that in the eyes of the bank, the company, the what we call it, the LLC, or even the property will pay itself. And when you go talk to the next property, and the next property will be approved better.
Okay.
On top of those other things that were already mentioned, we try to aim for like 25% equity. So that way, when we refi, we could get most of our money out, ideally.
Okay. That's one I'm a big fan of. Now, what happens when you see a good deal and you're able to pull out half your cash? Let's say it's 15% or 12 or somewhere around that, and you can pull out half the cash. Is that something that you still bite at?
I think that's where you have to look at the other things too, like the cash on cash return, right? So if it meets a certain goal there, then I think it would make sense. So I'm not opposed to that personally. And I think it depends on everybody's situation, right? Like if you have to be able to get everything out to keep doing your next deal, or if you have, you're financially okay to leave, 10, 20,000 in. So
yeah, that's a very big point there, because let's say you have 50K to invest and you end up leaving 35K in that first deal. Nothing wrong with that. But if your goal was to take down 10 of these things, well, you There's other strategies you need to start looking at here. So I don't want to belabor this point, but the reason I call it out is it's going to be different for everyone on this call. Like, we're probably all going to be like very similar around some things, but there's going to be different metrics that everyone's looking for. And you can't just be like, well, Tom says this is a good deal, so I'm going to do what Tom does. Like, something that I look at and you look at might be completely different for the goals that we're trying to accomplish. And that goes for anyone else on the call as well. So it's good to talk to other investors. It's good to network. It's good to find out like some rough baselines, but you need to figure out what you want to do. You need to figure out, what does the next 5 years look like for me? What do I want to get out of this? And then you can start running your numbers based off of that. And that's what we're going to talk about here for a second. So these are 3 things I want to accomplish next year, right? I'm sharing them with you guys as examples to help get your mindset. If you haven't thought through this already, then use this as a baseline or use this as an example. But, if you talk to me in December 2021, my net worth is going to be $1 million higher than it is today. We're going to do that by just like, I didn't know who was speaking, but the lady was speaking who said, hey, like, I want to pull out all my money. Exactly. Like, that's what I need to be doing on my deals. If I have 50K left in the refi, it must create at least 100K in equity. And that might sound confusing right now. We're going to walk through that in a deal. And then also, I don't want to be all over the place. Like, for those of you who know my story, like, I scaled doing it one single family at a time, and I'm glad I did. And it's good. They're nice. It's a nice little portfolio. It sucks. I have a lot of roofs. Like, I have a lot of mortgage payments. Just like the technical side of things are very, very hard. And like, you don't want to have 25 single families, then have 50. Maybe some people do. I don't. Like, there's a point where you also have to start thinking about these things logically. So I feel like a lot of people, like, when you get into real estate, it's, I'll use the term like vision, then a focus and action. Everyone has a vision. I want a house hack. I want this property. I want a 3-unit. I want whatever. But then we don't put any focus around that. And so, like, I think like that's like probably, and then taking action is probably the biggest thing as well. But take it a step further from vision and going to action. And if you think about like these 3 things, these 5 things you're going to do in the next year, like, this should be the stuff that gets you out of bed, right? This isn't like a task. This is the stuff that should be like the, holy crap, like, real estate is the greatest thing in the world. I want to wake up every morning and deal with all the I'll call it tough parts of real estate to make this thing happen. So I guess like turning this over to you guys for a second, like, who here feels like they have a good grasp on that? If I ask you like 1 year from now, what's going to be different? Who's got like a pretty well-defined idea? You don't have to share with me. I'm just curious, like, if this is all like repetitive and boring, we can skip through it, or if you guys feel like, hey, like, you know what, I do have to come up with a little bit more meat around what I want to try to accomplish here.
I'm actually in the process of kind of making my own smart goals or whatever for the time being. But I feel like the hardest part is getting them to a point where you're able to break it down into like smaller actionable steps. Because, someone can say like, I want to generate a portfolio that provides $10,000 a month in cash flow, in 5 years. But, what does that translate to into like actionable steps is kind of like where I'm personally at.
Yeah. All right. So I didn't pay Chris to say it, but that's our next slide here. So let's jump in. Let's answer that with the slide. So it's really cool to say you want 10K in cash flow, right? Like, it's really cool to say all these things. It doesn't matter. Like, you need a game plan. I'm a guy who, like, I really believe in like affirmations. I do the morning miracle. I love all that stuff. It's not a substitute for just grinding out and doing the work. It's a supplement. It's something that helps you, but like, you got to take some action. There's a lot that goes into that. And so here's a good example to share. So we talk about like, all right, I want to own something. This was at the beginning of the year. I thought like I was going to own a lot of property in Hermosa. I was hot on it, and things haven't really turned out great there. I've been making a lot of offers. I've done well on the Northwest side, but we've only really flipped in Hermosa. But I don't know anything about Hermosa before this year. And so how am I going to know what a good deal is there? This is a new territory for me, right? How am I going to know what's a good deal there if I don't know the lay of the land, right? You're talking about how we want to get from point A to point B. Well, you got to know point A first and foremost. And then you got to know like the rules of the game. So like, I'll use a good analogy here, or I'll use an analogy here. Hopefully it makes sense. It's Sunday, it's football, so hopefully it ties in. If you're on the 40-yard line and you want to get to the end zone, cool, the end zone's there. I want to get there. Well, there's a lot more that goes into it. You need to know the rules of the game, and you need to know what the defense is giving you. You need to know, like, all right, where can we get 5 yards at a clip? Where can we take our shot? Where, like, there's a lot of factors that go into play. And if you don't study that, if you don't understand that, you're just going to be sitting at the 40-yard line saying, well, I want to get to the end zone, and I'm going to keep looking at the MLS, and I'm going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. I'm not going to get anywhere, right? So what can you start to do today so you have all that information? You know, this is one thing I would highly recommend. Whatever, if you're looking to own, if you're looking to flip, it's a little bit different. But if you're looking to own property, whatever zip code you're in, you need to know that inside and out, right? And like, this is an example like I use, and I have this for pretty much any area on the Northwest side, and I update it monthly. So like, you can take an address, building type, bed, bath, square foot, the rent, all the different variables that are going to affect pricing, and start to figure out, all right, I see, you know, so when a wholesaler comes to me and says, I got this 5 unit and rents are at $850 a piece, I know right there, I'm kicking out all 5 tenants, and I'm going to do something to get to 1,200. Or does my rehab need to get me to 1,300? Right? Like, now I can start figuring out my rehab number. Like, you need to know all this information. You need to know the ARV. This is just the rent side of it. Then you need to know the ARV on the backside too, which is pretty easy to figure out. You can look at sales. You can start to figure out what quality rehab gets you what you need. But like, if you don't do this, how are you gonna know what a good deal is? If you don't know what's trading in the area, like, how are you gonna know what's good and what's bad? Like, what happens is you become like very dependent and very reactive. A wholesaler sends you something, you say, oh, let me go look at rents. Let me go do this. And then you go look at all this, and you still don't know if it's a good deal or not. You still can't make, you know, you still have a lot of, you have 60% of the work done. And you're wondering, well, yeah, I'm looking at this comp, but it's different than mine, and I can't figure it out. If you do all this work on the front end, that's when it becomes, your brain just has a script. If I see this, then that, right? Like, I can tell you guys right now, like, when we do flips in certain neighborhoods here in my own backyard in Jeff Park and Portage Park, if I see one of those little frame properties that's just 2 beds, 1 bath, I know we're going to dormer the top of that. We're going to make it a 4.2. It's going to sell between 450 and 500. It's going to cost us 100 to 150K in rehab. I know pretty much what I can pay for it. I need my GC to get in there and tell me it's going to be closer to 100, closer to 150, and we can make an offer, and we can do it like in the matter of minutes, right? And it's because we have seen like 100 of these properties, and like we've and then every time we've done it on the front end, we've looked at comps, we know what's sold, we've gotten the feedback from all our different ones. So like, you might not have like that sort of like back end like information, but all this information's out there. All the rents, all the ARVs, like everything is out there. So you can see something and know, man, those rents are undervalued. I can push those $200. I know right now it's going to cost me 10 grand to do washer dryer, but I know I'm going to get 200 a unit. Let's do it. Like, you're going to be able to start thinking in a different manner than someone who just looks at something on the MLS and doesn't see an opportunity, right? People always ask about like creative ways to make deals happen, but like, you can't do that without doing all this boring work up front. So this would be like, we're going to talk about deals here, I promise, but this is like the point I'd love to hammer home, because like, it's a necessity that a lot of people skip. And the other thing I want to point out is, like, anytime I say something along these lines, don't go bury yourself in a spreadsheet. I know that might sound counterproductive, but like, do this and do it so you can take action. This is like the exact opposite of analysis paralysis, right? It might seem like well, Tom, why the hell are you telling me to go bury my head in a spreadsheet and do, look at 100 different apartments in my area? It's because if you do that on the front end, you won't have analysis paralysis. A deal will come and you'll be able to act instead of being, being scared and being like, oh no, I don't know what to do. You'll be in a position of confidence, and not like an arrogant confidence, like an earned confidence. Like, you know what the answer is. So that's
when it comes to developing like a spreadsheet like this, when you're doing this type of work on the front end, is it just a matter of just scraping through Zillow or Redfin or any other form of the MLS? And
there's nothing crazy about it. If you got a broker working with you, have them pull the stuff, right? If you're serious and if you're making offers and you've already bought something with them, they'll do it. If they know you're serious, it's that simple though. And then the other thing I would do is do it on a monthly basis. So you see what's out there on apartments.com, on Zillow, whatever it might be. Well, what's still sitting there a month later? What moved, right? You'll know what's not on the market. All right, well, that went, you get a better feel for the market. You can sit here and go like, man, shit's not moving. I better be pretty conservative in my writing. and you see what is moving and know like, all right, anytime someone's done whatever, stainless steel, it goes in 2 weeks. Like we got to bump, we got to include that. It's got to happen. Right. Or, you know, man, if you don't have parking here, we're going to take a beating. Like it's not going to work for us. We got to walk.
Do you use any automated tools to create this? I know, stuff like those details which you mentioned, stainless steel or garages that you can't automate, but is there any automated tool that will, scrape through the internet and give you at least some of the basic metrics here? Like for example, 2 bed, 1 bath, 1,000 square feet, and this rent is what's going in this section of the area, or just do it manually?
So I would just do it manually, because if you automate it and just look at it on a spreadsheet like this, you won't comprehend it as well. I feel like this is a learning exercise, not a get it done exercise. Right? Like if you had to study for it, like if you had to study for a test and told the VA to read the book for you and give you the cliff notes, like you'd probably pass the test, but you wouldn't be an expert. Like I feel this is something like that has to be done at least on the front end until you really know an area. And then like, hey, like tell a VA to go run the report again for next month. Tell me what's sold, then have them come in and do it. But I think this is something that like you have to like suck it up and just do the work.
Makes sense. And I guess it would be better to know those smaller details that you mentioned as well. Like the automated system would never tell me, what stainless steel appliance are selling better in this area. There's no way to do that. So I guess that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is, so if you look like it, let's see if I have it in my notes here. All right, so if you see like in condition here, like I called out a few, like it's like Crandon, and it's not Crandon like, better than Crandon, 223. Like I'm calling out like other properties, like that makes it more tangible. Because if you just write, like some of these notes are pretty crappy now that I'm looking at them. If I just say nicely done, what the hell does that mean? Right. So like even if you don't have like your own portfolio, you should anchor them around other properties. Like just pick three properties. Pick one that's like done to the nines, pick one that's okay, and pick one that's like dated, and just use those as your anchor. So like you can have them in here, as opposed to like just writing verbs of nice. Because when you go back and look at it a week later, you're not going to remember, was it nice like this, nice like that? Like that's a fluffy adjective that like is hard to quantify. You'll never get perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but like you have to go through this to really know what's out there. And this, I mean, guys, this can be done with no money. That's the thing. Like people are like, I'm just getting started, I just want to do something. Like this is just putting a little bit of time. So when that opportunity does come, again, you're in a position of confidence and you pounce, right? And you have a good feel for it. Maybe you're still a little hesitant because it's the first deal or it's a second deal or it's a lot of money or whatever it is. But like all that work you've done, you've created that script where if I see this, then that, it becomes just an asset for you, right? Like that's it. It's a lot of work on the front end to eliminate the analysis paralysis. So on the bottom here too, I'm not going to talk about this today because we're talking about analyzing deals, but like the other big thing, like who, not what, I don't know if anyone's heard that phrase before, but like pulling in other people to make your life easier, whether that be a VA, GC, attorneys, like you need a team here, right? Like that's been the biggest thing. Like I would, if someone asked like, what's the one advice you'd give, it's like, you got to get the team, right? Like I would be so screwed if I didn't like have the people around me that I did, or that I do right now. Like it's just, it's a safety net. It makes your life easier. It creates time. Like it's great for you if you want to do the spreadsheet yourself and get into this. But if you're really going to treat this as like a business, or like, hey, I'm going to take down 10 units, 12 units, 15 units, whatever that number is that you're looking to do, at some point, you're going to have to start including other people. So even if you're on like your first house hack, get a realtor, like, talk to the John Warrens, the Jake Flugmans of the world, get people involved. Like they're here to help. Like people like me and Mark, we have conversations like this all the freaking time. Like there's a lot of people who've done whatever you're doing, and just reach out to them. Like, and like, have you ever reached out to someone, they said, no, F off? Like, no, like they're going to help. Like 99% of people are good people.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this? So this is kind of just a summary of the last slide though, but like it's not like a deal that makes you. It's all that work, all that prep that makes it happen beforehand. This is not my quote. It's stolen from someone. It might be. I know John C. Maxwell's got the "You'll never change your life unless you change what you do daily." This is like a spoof off that, I would guess. But like a question I would, when I first started, a question I would always ask myself: anytime I was like getting caught doing like, I'll call it secondary activities, like being on Bigger Pockets or like just kind of browsing the MLS like without a purpose. There's nothing wrong with any of those, but they're secondary activities. And I would always ask myself like, hey, are you a real estate investor? Or are you someone who's interested in real estate? Right? Like what are you? And like you have to make sure those daily actions align to like, I'm an actual investor, right? And it doesn't matter about your past. It doesn't matter if you've done 0 deals. Your actions can still dictate that you are a real estate investor, right? So that's I promised I would dive into deals, so let's do that. But I hammer these points home because like it's great if you can analyze a deal, but it's not going to matter if you don't do any of this upfront work. This is a dependency, so that's why I wanted to make a big point about it.
Tom, I just wanted to ask real quick. You're one of those people too, especially that you're still maintaining, your job, on a full-time basis. From at least what I understand is so. For those of us who do have full-time positions, what ways are you incorporating, your real estate investing and, performing these tasks and taking daily action into your everyday life?
Yeah, I mean, let's break it down for a second, just like hours in a day kind of thing, right? So if you get 8 hours of sleep, you have 16 hours to get this done, right? Maybe you work 7 or 8, you still have 8 hours, you have family, I get there's a million other responsibilities. But like, if you can carve out an hour a day, right? Like when you're sitting down watching Netflix, when you're sitting down, whatever, like to put together that spreadsheet for an area, that's like a 3-hour activity, right? Like it's not a big deal to update it every month. Like we're not talking like a ton of time. I think people get confused. Listen, it's hard with time. Like I don't want to sound like insensitive, but it's focusing on the right task as opposed to doing a bunch of different tasks, right? If you just spend an hour a day on the right task, you're going to be in a fine spot. That's what it is. It's doing the right things as opposed to like, man, I don't know about this, so now I'm going to read a book about self-storage because maybe I can find something there, right? Like, or oh man, someone said they bought something in Bridgeport. I know nothing about it, but I'm just going to go look at and analyze this deal for an hour and a half. And I probably would never buy it anyways because I don't have enough information to confidently make a decision. It's like, and I catch myself doing that crap all the time. Right. But that's the stuff you got to avoid. You got to be laser focused on this is what I want. This is what we're playing in. I'm going to have all the information and let's go.
Thanks.
All right. Other questions before we jump into a couple deals? All right. So I wanted to pick 2 that I didn't want to pick like ones like, hey, the VA's got in like, hey, this is a great deal. Like I wanted to pick ones that the second one's an MLS one. This one is from a wholesaler, but I came across my desk 3 different times in about a 6-hour period. And it has nothing to do with me having like a podcast or having a track record, like just from like the stuff I have signed up for. This came across my desk 3 different times, like I said. So, we talked about at the beginning of the call, we talked about some of the goals. This is a 3-unit in Portage Park, a legal 3. You're gonna have double-digit cash on cash. You're gonna create 75 of equity in 90 days. I think most people would raise their hand and take this deal on this call, right? Or if not, it's at least you looking into, and we'll break that down in a second. So before we even get into the deal, like how many of you actually saw this deal? Did anyone see this deal at all, or see any of these like notifications come across? That's a problem, right? Like this is free. This is something you can control, right? So Mike Kersovich emailed it out at 465. Oh, sorry. I said, okay, I like this area. That price probably doesn't work for me. Got a Craigslist notification. It's out at 445. So 2 things here. 1, Mike doesn't have it under contract. Mike's taking the wholesaler and he's trying to JV it and get his 20K, as you can see right here. Also, why be on Craigslist, right? That probably sounds truly dated to you guys. Why would you be on Craigslist as an investor? Like, what are some good reasons?
Probably the older population who have buildings, they're used to Craigslist or they're used to, you know, putting in a newspaper. So those would be areas that they would be advertising in and not necessarily on websites.
Yeah, like exactly. You know who I want to buy a property from? Some dude who lists his rent on Craigslist. Like that's the guy I want to buy from. I don't want to buy from some guy who's got Mark Ainley listing it. Like that's somewhat professional, and I'm not going to get a huge spread there. Maybe if I'm looking for turnkey, that's great, right? My point is, if I'm looking for some true value add, I want to find the guy who's got a for rent sign or got some Craigslist for rent, you know, and it's just popping up like every day the same amount and not going anywhere, right? So like you should have those notifications. So you don't really see a lot of properties like this, but here, boom, property comes across. I say, okay, I'm going to take a look at this. This hits on a Friday. It's like 9 o'clock. I'm in the middle of the workday. I say, I got to get a hold of this guy when I get, 20 minutes to make a call and figure things out. Then we see Mike Baker. Mike's a wholesaler here in Chicago. Also a developer, great guy. You should get to know him. Like, go ahead and friend him. Tell him we chatted. I can give you his cell if you want. He posted saying, hey, I got this property. So now it becomes pretty clear. Mike's got this thing under contract here. And he's actually got it JV'd with another wholesaler. So I'm saying, wow, all right, it's going through Mike. I actually know him. I've bought properties off him. We flipped 3929 North Richmond through him. So I'm saying, all right, at this number, I can probably make this thing work based on the pictures he's showing, because I know that a legal 3-unit in Portage Park that's rehabbed is going to get me close to about that 575, 600K, right? It's going to get there. I know that. I know the ARVs, like little things can be off here or there, but just at first glance, I know that number. And I'm buying for 445. If this is a minimal rehab, I can get this thing done. If this is a 100K rehab, I got a punt, right? So let's look at some pictures. Let's see how doable it is, and let's walk this thing. So make a note. So now I've seen this thing 3 times in the matter of like 90 minutes. And I'm in the middle of a work day. I say, all right, I'm going to give Mike a call. So a couple of things, like one, like these are all 3 ways you guys can see this deal, right? Like get on these wholesalers list, make friends with them. I can send, if as a follow-up, I can send like whoever I have here, right, for contact. And then just like you should be seeing these opportunities, whether you act on them or not. Like you should be getting your at bats. So before I can reach out to Mike, Mike calls me, and then we finally get a hold of each other. He says, hey, I got something in your backyard. Do you want to take a look at it? So let's walk through it for a second. And I chose this deal because it's not like some silly, oh, it's our next guy. I chose it because it's not like some silly home run. It's a good deal. We're somewhat short on time. So here, let's show you some pictures. To give you an idea of the condition. Legal 3, let's just go unit by unit. Main unit, 2-1, here's your front room. Dated.
And Tom, you're free to go over if you're not tired of talking. I think that should be fine.
Okay. So go ahead, ask questions. Someone say someone besides Alex talk there. So your typical dated property, right? Like nothing really wrong with it. Dated. There's our owner. See, the kitchen is okay, right? Like not great. They have their stainless steel appliance. They have these older cabinets. They got these older tile. They got this big bonus back room here that could technically become a 3rd bedroom if you structure it correctly. So that's unit 1. Unit 2. I don't have any pictures in there. Lovely. Here's unit 2. This is that big bonus room. There's the owner's dog. Unit 2, they've done a little bit of work. We got a kitchen in here, right? Like I'm probably not, our strategy is usually to drop a lot of money. We usually do 150, 200K rehab type thing and make things to the 9s. This is not like what we consider finished product, but I'm not going to rip this out by any means, right? Like this is going to work for a tenant. Older bedrooms, old paneling. Let's see here. Older bath, it's one of the ones you can look to reglaze it, change out the vanity, obviously change out this sliding door. Thought they did that in like the 70s. Older unit, mirrors the first. Up here, it's got its bonus 3rd bedroom over the stairs, like most units, right? Where the main level is a 2-1 and the top upstairs is a 3-1, because you can fit that little, 9x9 over the stairs there. Ripped up the carpet, there's hardwood underneath, right? Which is great, right? We can look to refurbish that. And then the garden unit is pretty beat up. Not beat up, but just dated. You walk in, you got a little front room, you got a little kitchen, you got 2 beds that are pretty big. They're like 13 by 10 and 11 by 10. No light. We got to put some can lights in there. Kitchen's got to go. Bath's got to go. You can see they were smokers. That's gross. That's just smoke from the paint. It smells horrendous in there. So anyway, just like a rough lay of the land, like walking this thing, it's not distressed, right? This garden unit's pretty beat up, but garden unit 1 and unit 2, people were living in them up until the time they sold it. They're dated. They're not great, whatever. So let me go back into, let's walk through a spreadsheet here. So let's talk about this and let's talk about our game plan. So a typical deal, like I'm usually the guy who wants to come in, buy something like this for, call it $350, drop $150 into it, have it come out for $6 and get most of my money back. That's usually like the game plan, right? This is a little bit different. We're buying at a higher price here. You saw Mike had it out there for $445. And we're going to try to get it done for a lot less than 100K because we're walking into something that's a lot more livable, a lot more habitable. So that's why it's another reason why I picked this one, because I didn't want to just show a bunch of like 150K rehabs, because if you can't handle that, it does you no good. This is one that, you know, with a good contractor, almost anyone can take on. So again, pulling from some of the Portage Park list, I have a whole giant spreadsheet, just like the sample one I showed you, but you know, hey, can I get 575 to 600? I can get 575 to 600, right? Here's 3 right here that I can take a look at. And if you want to go into more detail, or if you want to just trust me that, hey, these are going to be legit comps here. The other thing is, here's my 3 1s. Here's my 2 1s. Here's my garden. Couldn't find a lot of gardens out there. Found a lot of 2 1s, but hard to find a garden. A lot of 1-1 gardens, hard to find a 2-1 garden. And then the other thing is, we're that back addition. If we drywall off to make it a separate from the back entrance there, we can make that a 3-1, and that's what we're doing. So now my end product's gonna be 2 3-1s and a 1-1. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna walk through this now, and I'm gonna try not to lose anyone. So I'm gonna go slow intentionally, and just like yell or ask questions. Or if I'm going too slow and you're like, Tom, this is boring as hell, let me know. So we end up getting this thing down to about 4:30. We get the call from Mike Friday. We walk it Saturday morning. Saturday, I'm talking to him saying, this is where I need to be. Like, we'll make it happen. You know, I'm good for it. Great. Let's do it. If not, no big deal. Take it to market. You know, point being, at 440, this deal still works, right? You don't need some relationship with a wholesaler to make this thing work. Like, that's just kind of the gravy on top here. My GC's with me. He walks it. He's thinking 45 to 50K. So let me take one step back. Column B here, what am I doing? I'm figuring out my all-in cost, and then down here, I'm figuring out my holding cost. Okay, so I'll take a step back. That's what these two are explaining. So I got my number from my GC. I take the higher end. I add my contingencies. I got closing cost times 2, because I got to close when I buy, and I got to close when I refi. All right, I got to refi it as well, right? If you want to talk about specifics of closing costs, we can. If not, let's keep going. Do you guys have questions on what to expect? Or
Yeah. Hey, Tom, can you zoom in a little bit on those?
yeah.
Awesome.
Good.
Perfect.
Better.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to be, before holding costs, our fees, our rehab, our purchase, we're going to be all in for just under 5, right? We got a hard money loan here. If you're running your own hard money numbers, your numbers are going to change. Right now, like, I'm with both Renovo and Lending Home, and they do it on a scale. So like every deal you do, you know, it's almost like if you guys do flights, you get your, you know, you're a silver member, a gold member, a diamond member, right? Like it's the same tiered programming like that. But even if you, let's change it. Even if you had to get this at 9% or whatever, 10%, whatever your rates are going to be, you know, this deal still works. So I'm changing this back though. It's actually a live sheet, so I don't want to dick around with it too much. But here's my holding costs. I'm paying 1 point on my hard money line. I'm figuring out this figures out my monthly payment. So I know if I have this thing open for 5 months, I'm paying about 10 grand just to the loan. I got my insurance, which will be prorated. I'll have 6 months of insurance to pay. I got my utilities. I got a blanket number in there just from experience. Holding costs plus including the point up front, it's going to be about 16K, right? So it's 492, this 16K, all those costs. This is just this column here coming over here. I'm all in this thing for about 510. Is everyone with me so far? So couple things. A lot of times people say, yeah, I bought for 430. I put 50 into it and I was out for 520. And you're like, wow, you were in for 480 out for 520, made 40K. Like, no, you made nothing. Like there's a lot more. There's a lot more that goes into this. So don't just take those costs. And if you're going to flip, like these numbers, our flipping calculator is a lot more different. I can show you that, like, because those holding costs will eat you alive. Like you need to account for them and you need to be conservative with them. So going back to this deal though, we're all in for just, let's call it 510, right? We think we're going to appraise about 585. I think I would bet anyone on this call $100, I get 600 plus on this thing. But let's say we're going to do 585, right? Let's use that number. It's also important if we're flipping what someone's going to buy for and what an appraiser is going to appraise it at are two different things. Like some of you have probably dealt with appraisers, like they're just going to take 3 close ones. They're not going to think about like the analysis we did, like in-unit laundry, stainless steel, like, you know, these guys are getting paid a couple $100 to slap this thing together. Like it's not malicious on their end, but you're going to get off appraisals. I just got one in my favor that I laughed at. Like I had a little property, a little single family home that I was like, oh my God, this is retarded. Like this thing is like, he overshot it by like, I don't have a garage on this property and he didn't give me any deduction for it. Like that's a big freaking deal, a garage. Like, so like my point is like, appraisers aren't dumb. They're not malicious, but they probably pump out a couple dozen reports a week and they make a lot of mistakes and they don't know every neighbor. This guy probably, after doing this one on the north side, he probably went down and did one in, you know, West Lawndale. And then he probably did one, you know, I don't know, up in Wisconsin, like, cause he's licensed there too. Like they're not experts in the area. So always when you're doing your cash out refi, I always go on the lower end there. I'm going to skip over column F for a second. We'll get back to it. But basically the numbers to pay attention to here, let's say we get a 585 appraisal. We're all into it for 510. So how I've created 75K of equity in, let's call it like a 90-day rehab, right? Now, am I able to pull out all my money on this deal? Someone answer.
Right.
No.
No, correct.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is not going to be a true burr. To be at a true burr, like if the number is 585, let me pull up a calculator here. If I'm getting 80% on the refi, I need to be at this 468, my all-in number. Does everyone follow that? Like, does that make sense, or am I starting to like lose people?
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Okay. So not a perfect burr, right? We're leaving money in the deal, but is it still a good deal? And this is something that we need to, maybe we all have different answers here, right? So quick recap. Here's like just like how I look at it. Personally, I'm going to have an asset worth 585 and a debt of 468. So I'm going to create 120. Like my net worth now on that asset, there's 120K spread. But I'm leaving 40K of money in the deal, which is the difference between my loan and my cost. Everyone follow? So I'm leaving 40K in, like 40K of my cash. Like, let's say I just had like this bucket of cash reserves. It's now 40K less, but I now have this asset with a 120K spread. So like, if I'm looking at my overall net worth, I just went plus 80, right? I like that. Like that's and we haven't talked about like the dividend it's going to pay in monthly cash flow. We haven't talked about appreciation. We haven't talked about the loan paying down. We're just talking day one before I even get a tenant in there. I'm up 80. And I'm capitalized where I can have that 40K sink in there. So I'm feeling okay about this. Now, if we think back to what I talked about at the beginning, like some of my goals, this gets hard to scale though. This is a good deal, and I feel like you should take this down, but like I can't do 20 of these this year, right? Like I can't leave 40K in every single deal. And so like I'll talk about that in a second, but I'm giving up equity now to have someone else leave money in the deal. So I'm giving up money in this deal. I'm not going to take that full 80K. I'm going to give up half of it. And then I'm not going to have money in the deal so I can keep moving. So I don't think we need to talk too much about that for underwriting, but just to go back to tying it to like, I bring it up to tie it back to like your overall goal. Like this is a good deal. Like I like this deal. It's in Portage Park too. It's not in like a neighborhood where I'm feeling like, I don't know, like I'm going to be dealing with a lot of BS. Like I feel good about this. But again, it's hard to scale if you're going to leave that, you can leave a good amount of money in there. So you got to get creative with those ideas too. If your goal is to buy three units next year, maybe this is much more doable, right? You're creating 80K on day one. Like it makes sense. So that's like the overall deal. And then here's your monthlies. Now I'll be completely honest. I'm somewhat sloppy in my monthlies because again, I'm more concerned about, am I making 80K, 100K? What is that number? Like, what is that spread I'm making? And if this thing cash flows at 300 a month, 500 a month, 600 a month, great. As long as I'm feeling good and confident about those numbers, but like, I'm not in a situation where I'm looking to get enough cash flow to cover some sort of expense. Like I'm more concerned about creating net worth for longevity. That doesn't mean I'm right. And the gentleman who was talking about cash on cash before is wrong. It means we have two different strategies, and the deals we analyze need to back into those strategies. They're both right. There's a million ways to make money in real estate, but you need to define like what's going to be most important for you. So I'll admit, like I'm usually pretty sloppy in my monthly breakdowns. Not sloppy, but I'm not as lasered in as other areas. So remember, I'm going to get 2 3-1s, right? We talked about that. And I'm going to have a garden. I'm running at 1750, 1750, and 1,000. I'm going to get 18 on these. Like I feel good about it. These comps are going to be a little bit nicer. This guy's got washer and dryer in. He doesn't have parking though, which I do have. So I offset a little bit. We're also bigger. We got that addition room. Like I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm running my numbers on this thing. Running my garden at 1,000. This one's 11. It's a little bit nicer. Again, doesn't have parking. I do. Now, I don't know if you charge parking separately. I do it kind of case by case, how I'm feeling. What are others doing? When I go to list, what are other listings out there? Like I kind of wait until I'm about to list the thing to figure out how I'm actually going to price this thing. But I can easily say like, you know what? Let's just do it at 1850 parking included. I can do 1750, $100 for parking, give them the option. The other thing on this one is I got my GC would take the 2-car garage from me from 200. So I know right there I have a $200 there if I wanted, right? I'm not taking them up on it yet because I want to see like, man, what if my tenants need parking, right? I told them you're the backup plan. So, but you can do, I don't even have laundry in here. I'm going to have coin operated, which will add some more money here. I don't even have that listed because again, I'm sloppy. I got my mortgage, vacancy, 5% is low. I'm also in Portage Park here, and I'm going to be at rents that I'm not pushing, right? You might want, in different scenarios, I run my vacancy at 10. Some of my south side stuff, I run it at 15 because I just know every year I'm going to turn over, and every year in that turnover, I'm going to have to do some paint. I'm going to have to do, like, there's going to be a turnover cost that I need to account for there. Here, my vacancy is low. I do buffer it a little bit by having just a built-in turnover cost. Like every year I'm going to have 15 grand or I'm sorry, 1,500 or whatever it is, just to paint a unit or whatever that might be. This one's next to me. I'm self-managing it. This is one where, again, it's personal preference. All my south side stuff, Mark manages it, and I got the 8% built in. And even if I ever take it over from him, it's built in right now. Like I know, because even if I do it, there's going to be a time suck there. It's hands-on. It's going to be a true cost. Here, I'm not accounting for it. This is about 6 blocks from my house. I probably should make this like 3% or something, right? There's probably should be some cost associated with it. In my head though, again, because I'm a little loose with these numbers, I'm thinking, well, I'm also going to get 18, 18, and 11. So cool. Like I'm covered. Property taxes. So right now, this is kind of an important note. If you guys look up property taxes, does everyone know how to look up property taxes? Are we all good there? Okay. So like in this scenario, got a homeowner's exemption, got a senior freeze, which is the big one, and the senior exemption. So like right now she's paying like $3,000, right? It's some silly, it's like some silly low number. So my point is don't get caught there. Because she's got all three exemptions, and that senior freeze being like a huge one. Insurance, water, insurance, this is the actual quote. Landscaping, pretty self-sufficient. I probably should up this actually, now that I'm talking to you guys, because I got snow removal in there. General electric, so the common areas, there's no fourth meter here, which is a little different than what I'm used to. I have one property in Pullman on Langley that's the same way. There's only three meters because it's been the same homeowner for like 25 years. And so I got to figure out if I'm just going to leave it be or up front just say, hey, you're going to get $25 off your rent because you're also paying for the garage and you're paying for this common area. And it's really going to be like $10 a month, but here you go. Just so they don't bitch about it. I don't know if anyone else has been in that situation. It's kind of like, this is only the second time I've had to deal with it though. So open to suggestions there. CapEx on this one, I'm just putting $750 a unit. Again, we're not in a 50K rehab here. I guess I should have talked about the finished product. Like we're not doing a to the nines flip, right? Like I'm leaving a little bit of money on the table, or I'm leaving a little bit of stuff on the table here. Like we're reglazing some tile in the bath. We're painting the cabinets in the main level instead of replacing them. When I do, like, I'll call it my flip product, I'll bump that number down to like 500 a unit just because, you know, things were just done to the nines and I'm already put in $3,000 a year for just the BS maintenance crap. So like CapEx, like what you should let me take a step back. CapEx, how's your roof? How's your porch? How's the garage slab? How's some of the things that you didn't do in your initial rehab and try to back into a number. I have a few properties where I have a huge allocation here because I have a porch and I know like, well, a porch is going to cost a three level porch is going to cost me $25,000 right now. Right. Like, so if you don't account for, you can either account for your numbers or you can just say like, hey, down the road, I'm gonna have to pay $25,000. One way or another though, like just because you ignore the problem, it doesn't disappear. So you can put in your monthlies or you can just have this bank reserve account. And when it hits, you can't be like, oh shit, that killed my numbers. Well, no, you should have known about it. So I actually most times I try to actually quantify what is that CapEx? Like, what am I leaving on the table? Especially like with flat roofs and porches, like they're just masonry. Like if you don't touch masonry, shit gets expensive. So anyways, here's your monthly dividend. That's how I look at it. But here's where cash flows after your contingencies. Again, if we all did this exercise, we'd all come up with a different number, right? Some of you guys would say this thing cash flows $800 a month. Some of you would say it doesn't cash flow. Like it's how you want to run your contingencies for your plan and based off your historical data. I don't want to understate it. It's important. It's important to come up with the most accurate number. For me though, I'm more concerned about what can I create on that front end? What is that spread? Because creating an 80K equity spread, it's going to take you a lot of $300 payments to catch up to that.
I was kind of just curious about your monthly breakdown in terms of setting these type of expenses aside. So in your particular case, do you set these monthly expenses aside on a monthly basis, or do you eventually build up to just like setting aside like, oh, we're going to put out, X amount per unit and just throw it into a savings account and then just keep all the cash flow from there?
Yeah. So the way I'm set up, it's a really good question. I have lumped specific properties together. So like you have an LLC and I have a series LLC that'll have anywhere from like, call it like 3 to 8 units. It's like my 6 units in one, my Pullman stuff's all in one. The single family homes are chopped up into like 5 each. This guy will probably be I'm taking down a property in Albany Park. I'm going to put the 2 of them together. Like I try to keep them separated at some sort of level. And then they're just into one savings account to answer your question. I don't have if I commingled all my stuff, it would be too much, but I don't do it on an individual building basis, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I put some seed money in there too. like anytime I open a new bank account, I just put the 10 grand or whatever, because I know like it's all like a mindset, right? I don't want to get hit with it later. So I just put it there. So any questions from what I went through? Like, and I'm not saying this is like, I care more about, again, like I said, getting the equity and being real confident in my numbers. I'm confident in my rent numbers here. I'm confident in my ARV numbers. And I think like everything else, you can kind of play with, because you can make this deal look as crappy or as awesome as you want, right? Like we know how that goes. And you also know, like, if you only buy 1 3-unit, maybe you get a pipe that bursts in the basement and you pay 20 grand. Like that happened. It just happened to me on one of mine. Like real estate's funny or you can get a tenant that never leaves. And I mean that in a good way, like a tenant who just, you never have turnover. You can have, and you can have it in the other way too. Like real estate's funny where you can try to mathematically figure out the averages, but I just want to prepare you. Like if you only own a couple buildings, like the averages are a good baseline, but it's not going to fall like this where it's like, okay, so every month I'll have exactly $375 left over. Like, no, you might be plush with cash for a year or two, and then you might have some giant expense. Like it doesn't work as systematically as we all would like it to work.
Yeah, and I guess this is a question. It's just kind of an insight I had, which you mentioned, like it takes a long time to make up those payments, make up like $80,000 of equity you're getting. I just kind of ran the numbers, and it would take 22 years for you to get that back just from straight rent payments if you got no equity growth. So I think that's a huge thing. You're only putting in 50K and you're getting 22 years of cash flow from this property right off the bat, tax free. Like I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, like that's like when I talk to other investors, like, oh, you really have like a flipper's mindset. And I was like, well, that's how you freaking make money. Like these guys who do syndications, they're flipping these properties on a 5-year plan. They're into it for 5 million and they're out for 9. Like it's a flip. Like it's not, the monthly cash flow keeps their investors happy. Like that is real estate. Like you do, that is where you make your money. If you talk to any of the Sam Zells or like the big boys of the world, they don't say like, that's what they say. They say how much in equity they have. Right. And like you can go the cash flow route, and it creates a lot of opportunity. You can quit your job. It's nice to have. It can be very passive. There's nothing wrong with it. It's awesome. But like, if you're really looking to make a dent, like equity is more of like, I'll call it like the big stakes. Like there's just more of an opportunity there. If you're sitting here saying like, I'm a house hacker, how do I create equity? Don't worry about it. Like it's a completely different ballgame that you're playing. You're getting your mortgage paid for. Like you are just looking for somewhere to live and have someone else pay for it. And guess what? 20 years from now, you're going to be happy that you own that building, right? Real estate can be a very long game. So like, if you don't create that equity on the front end, don't worry, you will get it at some point. It's going to take you longer than someone who gets it in 90 days. But like real estate can be very forgiving if you take a longer term horizon to it, right? There's a lot of ways to skin this cat. So like, kind of like to piggyback off that, like here, I'm a big fan of IRR. IRR can be very tricky. There's a lot of assumptions make. It's very hard to predict the future, right? Like you ask someone in 2007 to run IRR and they look like an idiot in 2010. So like be very careful with these numbers, but at least it allows me to compare deals against each other if I run them all through the same model. So just like a quick summary, we're buying this thing. We're all in for 510, right? Bought for 430, 50K rehab. Then I got contingencies. I got closing costs. I got all the holding costs. So I'm in for 510. I'm getting a loan for 468. It's worth 585. So I'm running this like 90 days after, like when I get my appraisal done, right? Here's my NOI minus my debt. Debt stays constant. That's one of the most beautiful things about real estate. Yes, your expenses go up, but your rent should be going up as well. And the main part of your expense is that debt, and that debt is going to stay consistent unless you refi and pull more money out, which is great. You know, it's within your realm to do. But here's that monthly dividend you're getting. So we didn't even talk about this and run our numbers, but this thing's going to spit out 6-7K after those contingencies I have in there, right? You get 10 of these things and that's pretty good. All right. Like that's not bad. We don't know about property value. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but we do know the loan will be this. I do know in 5 years, my loan will be 421, right? Like that is a set fixed number that no matter what happens to the market, we know that. 585, real estate on average goes up anywhere, let's call it 3 to 7%. We also know it goes down. It's not going to keep going up year over year over year, right? I just run my model at 3% because that's inflation. It's gone up 10% since like April. It's been nuts here. It's going to go down at some point too, right? But if I run it at this model of just 3, now my spread is 678 minus 421 in year 5. Now you're talking real money, right? And let's say things go down. Let's say 585. Let's say it goes down to 500. Let's say we have a 2008, and this thing's worth 500 in a year. I bought the market crashes tomorrow, and Tom timed this thing as poorly as possible, right? Well, let's say it gets down to 500. It claws its way back, and 5 years later, it's not worth $1 more than I bought it. I still paid that $40K and got something worth $130 when the world was on fire. Like, what stock are you going to buy for $40,000, have the world go on fire, and come out on the other side with 130? Not to mention get paid for it every year. Right? Like, so like, we need to be cognizant of the market. Yes, we're probably going to see a dip here, and like, but like, this goes back to long term. Like, if you buy right, like, real estate can be very, very, very powerful. And then just imagine running this on 10 years. This keeps going up. This keeps going down. Like, it works in your favor, guys. One of the things here, I'm going on a little tangent here, but one of the things most people don't know about me, when I was 22, I bought a townhome out in Plainfield because I worked out there. My first job right out of college. And townhomes at the time down there were so damn cheap. It was cheaper than the gas living on the north side of Chicago and driving down there. Plainfield's in Bufu. It's past Joliet. For those of you who don't even know where it is, it's in Will County. It's in the middle of cornfields. It's unbelievable. I don't know why I took a job there, but I did. After a while, I was like, this is insane. I got to get a place where I can just live Monday to Thursday, come to Chicago Thursday through Sunday, party, come back hungover on Monday and work. And so I did that. And I bought at the absolute peak of the market, like a cartoon, like the day of the top of the market. I feel the day after I bought that property, things just collapsed, right? That thing has still been awesome for me. Like, it's still like, I had 3 other guys after I bought it. 3 other guys said, can I move in? Like, everyone wanted to do the same thing. Everyone was sick of driving to Chicago back and forth. And I've had tenants in there ever since. And even though this equity went horrendous for the first 3 years, that thing's now free and clear and just a money line for me to buy real estate. That thing's worth 170, and I have a little home equity line on it that I use to buy properties. And I literally bought it at the worst time ever. Like, I literally couldn't have timed it any worse. I had no idea what I was doing. But what I do have on and now keep in mind, there's an opportunity cost. You could have made a good investment at that time and done even better, right? Like, I don't want to make this thing sound overly fluffy, but like, I look back at it like, man, 15 years later, like, I'm glad I did that. Like, I'm still in a better position because I did that. So I don't, when and if the market turns, like, I guess don't panic. Real estate's a long game. Now, if you're like me and you have like 10 flips sitting on the market, all right, yeah, maybe you feel a little bit different. But if you're buying like a couple of units here or there, like, I wouldn't freak out about it. So any other questions on, I guess so going back to my goals, this is the same sheet I showed you. Now I'm pulling an investor in. We're going to leave 40K in this deal. Why is that? It's $1,000 difference in the other sheet. So I have an error somewhere, but now we have $40,000 in this deal, right? He's going to leave 75% of the money in. So after that refi, whatever we got to leave in, whatever our cost was and whatever we're leaving in, he's leaving 75%. So if it's 40K, he's leaving 30, I'm leaving 10. So now I only have 10K in this deal, right? And now remember, this is just some guy who's got money. This is my buddy who he does financing on my flips. And he's saying 10% return and we're going to, own this thing and get the equity. Like, this is just off of this cash flow number. He's saying, cool, I'll do it.
Let me kind of clarifying that again real quick. So you purchased this property with hard money through like Renovo or the other place, and then your goal is to refi out, you cash out, and then how are you structuring this with that other investor at that point?
So let's say there's 40K left in this deal, right? We get a loan for 468. We tally all our costs. Hey, it costs us 410. And these my spreadsheet's not a 1-to-1 ratio as well, making it weird. I must have made changes on one, but not the other. But anyways, there's roughly 40K left in the deal. Whatever that number is, it could be 40. This thing can appraise at 600. And now, oh, not 60. That'd be bad. That'd be real bad for everyone. But if it appraises at 600, now we only have 28 in it, right? If it appraises at 550, we have more in it. Let's do 565. Like, you can run different models. But let's say it gets that 585 for consistency, because that's the number I've been using. He's going to, whatever this number ends up being, he's leaving 75. He's responsible for 75% of it.
Okay.
I'm responsible for 25. So I'm going to leave 10 grand in this thing. If it appraises lower, I'm leaving 15 grand. If it appraises higher, I'm leaving 7 grand.
Gotcha.
And then we're splitting the equity 50-50.
So, but his name will be on the deed, and how does that work? Like,
Yep. When we refi, we're going to have an LLC with both of us.
I see.
Do you
Right
have
now,
an
it's just me, because I'm doing the hard money. I'm doing all the BS. But like on the refi, you're absolutely right. It would be an LLC where we both have, and that LLC would be, John and Tom partnership. And John and Tom partnership has an operating agreement spelling this all out.
Logistically speaking, do you have an attorney write up an agreement for every property you buy, or every partnership you have with a specific person? How do you go about doing that?
Yep. So you don't have to spin up an LLC. If it's the same person, you don't need to spin up an LLC every time. You need to spin up different operating agreements. If it's different people or different structures, so let's say Tom and John buy a property, but then Tom, John, and Alex want to buy a property, new LLC, and you pay the $2 grand for it or whatever to spin it up. So there is a cost of doing business there. And I'll gladly pump my guy Chance Badisher handles all this for me. He's awesome.
Okay.
Vivek's awesome too. That's Mark's guy. We have Tom Raleigh coming on the show in a little bit. He's an eviction dude. Like, there's a lot. Man, there's like 5 other great ones. There's a bunch of great attorneys out there. If you don't have one, talk to other people. Like, because there's a lot of great attorneys that you just tell them, this is what I want to do. How can I do it where I'm protected and it doesn't cost me an arm and a leg and it doesn't handcuff me moving forward? And they'll give you the answer.
Tom, I had a quick 2 more questions. The first one is just real quick. How do you estimate your closing costs? Is it just a certain percentage that you take out of the purchase price?
Yeah, and so that's where this one's short on closing costs by a lot. 7 grand is gonna be your number here. So a couple things. When you go to buy a property, one of the biggest things in Chicago is you have the Chicago, you have county tax, you have state transfer tax, but then you have the Chicago tax, which is 1%, and the buyer pays 2/3 of it. It's like a 2/3 to 1/3 ratio. You can look it up. There's a calculator online I use. So like on this property, like I have 3 grand going to the city off the bat for closing costs, right? I know what my closing costs are with Renova and Lending Home. It's basically going to be an application fee, an appraisal fee. You're going to have title. Title's going to be $1,800 to $2,500, and you have all your little BS updates with it as well. Let's see, so there's title, appraisal, lending. I got my point in my hard money line here, so I like my actual lender fee. And then on the refi, basically all you're going to have is an updated commitment, the appraisal, and whatever the bank's going to charge you up front. So let me put it this way. This 7 grand is not 35 and 35. It's like 55 and 15. The refi is going to be much less than your purchase.
Okay. And then the other question that I had was, with regards to your appraisal, is there anything that you particularly do to kind of maximize your chances of getting the appraisal that you're shooting for?
Oh, hell yeah. We're going to send this thing over and be like, this is how we ran our numbers. These are our comps. These are our finishes. Like, we are going to influence that guy. Right. You should always tell them what they might not ask for it, but they'd be like, listen, these are the comp. When we made the purchase, I'm not going to tell you, you're never going to tell the guy how to do your job, but you're going to say, when we made our purchase, these were the finishes these were the comps we ran our numbers at, and show them. Like, I'll show them. I showed you like the realistic ones. I'll show them 625 and be like, we're actually getting more rents than these. Actually, this one's only a 2 unit with an illegal 3. I'm legal. I have a garage. He doesn't. Like, you're going to just do his job for him and make him say, no, you are off. Here's how you do it. Again, these guys are just pumping out a ton of these. You're doing them a favor. They're gonna be like, oh, great, you did it for me already. Just save me 30 minutes. Like, right? Like as long as you're not, and don't be an asshole. Like don't be don't be an idiot about it. But like take the ones that are realistic and say like this is what I ran my numbers at.
And is this something that you put together to give to your lender to send to give to their appraiser, ahead of time, or is this?
The lender's not going to do it. So what happens is they're going to say the appraiser is going to call you to set up a time. The appraiser calls. I say, hey man, great. Hey, like because he's going to ask a few questions like, what are the rents? What are you doing? I'll be like, I actually put this all together because I had to show an investor. Let me just send it over to you, and just send it to him. Nice, cleaned up, and boom. Right, like make him instead of a blank canvas where he has no idea what you're looking for, and he just knows like the loan amount. He has no idea what you're actually like looking for, what you're expecting. He's just going to go out there in an area he might have never appraised something. These guys, if you're licensed in Illinois, he can go appraise something in Peoria tomorrow. Like, he has no idea. He's not being bad. If everyone on this call, and we all think we're very good at real estate, if we all want to appraise this property, we'd all come up with different numbers. It's just reality, right? It's a hard thing to do. I don't want to make these guys sound like idiots. It's hard. It's subjective. So like set the baseline. Yep, this is what I did, and make him say, well, actually you're wrong here, which is fine. Then he's gonna at least have proof for it, as opposed to like just randomly picking a bunch of properties. So absolutely.
And all these are commercial loans, the long-term financing.
Yeah, so that's actually a good question because I go back and forth on this a little bit. So I do not want to put anything else in my personal name right now. Like just right now, like I have things in my personal name, and like I'm at a point where I don't care about the extra half point or whatever on the rate. Like I need to set this up as more as a business, and I need to be more. It's not just like I have a house hack and then the second property. Like I in like, you can always quit claim into the LLC. Well, if you have a couple $1 million of that and they all call you due, like what the hell do you do? Right? At some point you need to start thinking about it more as a long-term play. So yeah, I do these through local banks, through the LLC. And especially if you have an investor, then you have to. Or you and him can do it jointly, like personally on the loan or whatever. But I almost always do LLC financing now. If you own like one property, two property, three properties, man, just keep going in the personal name, like until it's where you're going to get your best financing terms. I do a lot in LLC financing though.
Hey Tom, do you for your rehab estimates, we probably don't all want to like have our contractor go out to every property before we buy them. Is there like a rule of thumb? Do you just do like, oh, this needs some rehab, I'm going to throw this random number in here as you're like running properties as kind of a beginner before you have your contractor going into all the properties for you? Is there a rule of thumb you have for that?
All right. So if you don't have your contractor coming with you, here's what and you're new, like, here's what I would do. So I've gotten to a point where I can almost be very good at my estimates because I've walked enough of these now. And I have no rehab experience before all this. Like I'm not like a son of a carpenter or anything. So, but like if you're going in there for like the first time, let's call it, or like you don't know what you're doing, know the square footage. They should have that online. So you should already just have that. Because like things like flooring, things like paint, that's what they're gonna want. Right? Like there's just hey, square footage, set costs, like so you have an idea of what that's gonna be. Then know the big ticket items. Right? I talked about like roof, mechanics. Are we doing electrical? Are we change? Is it on a boiler and we got to change it to HVAC? Like what is there masonry work that needs to be done? Like what? Like just all the lay of the land that you might not be thinking about. And then you need to give him. I feel like we always bang on contractors, but like we never give them clear direction. Yeah, I want you to rehab the bathroom. Well, what does that mean? Like, like I'm going to take the contractor side here. As investors, we're very poor at giving them detailed direction. So whether it be pictures from other jobs, right? Like that's one of the easiest ways to communicate. Like with me and my GC, like if you looked at our text thread, it'd be like, no, do it like Richmond. No, do it like Farragut. No, do it like we reference our jobs all the time. And even if you don't have that, you can just go pull one off the MLS. It's not yours. I want the subway tile and I want it to look like this. And I want this vanity. And I want like this high end finish. Or I want my end unit just to look like this end unit that's getting $2,000 a month. What is it going to cost to get there? And tell me what you're going to do. Right? Like you have to give them like, here's the lay of the land. Here's some of the behind the scenes we might not see. I'll call it like money we just got to waste. That's a bad way to think of it, but updating a roof is not going to drive my value. So it's just kind of money that has to be spent. And then like, what is the desired end result? Because if all of us walk this building, we would all come up with some different game plan for what we're going to do and what it's going to look like. Right. So I don't know if that like actually answers the question, but like I would get, that's what I would get. And I'd also, if you're going to have a contractor who maybe like he's done a deal for you and maybe you aren't like super close where he's going to walk it with you every time, I would just say like, what do you need from me? Right? I'll get you videos. Like, what do you need from me while I'm there that will help you get within 10% of what you think it's going to cost? Because I just kind of made the assumption for that guy. He might want something completely different. But like when I showed you guys the videos, like I get a video of almost here. When I was trying to explain that we were going to make that one a 3-1, one of these videos shows it. No, never mind. I'm an idiot. Here. See if this is it. This is the second floor. Just walked up the steps. You enter here into this addition room. What would be nice is if you drywall that up, made it a hallway, so this can actually be a bedroom. There's an actual deck here out to the side. Walk in, kitchen. So I'm explaining that I want that third bedroom. Like I just explained to him, this is what I want. Right? Like there's nothing like earth shattering there, but like if I just said, hey, and they got this addition, I want it to be a third bedroom. And he's like, well, what do you want? Like, what does that mean? By the way, like what I just showed you there, that was on the second floor. And this is how dumb I am. He's like, why would you want to make that one a bedroom? The first floor is the one that has 2 bedrooms. So if he would have just blindly listened to me, I would have had a 4-1 and a 2-1, which are both terrible units. A 4-1, like. So the first floor is the one getting the third bedroom. But it goes to show like you make a lot of mistakes. I don't know, Alex, does that help answer the question? Is there something else you're looking for there?
Oh, that's a great answer. I think a lot of people struggle with that when they don't have a contractor that they've used before who like knows they're going to use them, and they're kind of running their numbers and doing the back end stuff that you talked about at the beginning. They don't know what to put in their spreadsheet because they're just looking at the MLS and app pictures. But I think that's helpful.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like you can start getting good. Like I know how much it costs to build a garage now. I know how much like our roofs are per like square for 100 square feet. I know what our cost is for hardwood for refurbishing. I know what it is for if we're just going to put in vinyl flooring. Like I know what painting is per square foot for us, mine for labor plus to add the paint costs. Like I got a pretty good idea what our trim cost is depending on what type of trim we do, right? So I can probably get 75% of the way there without them, which just comes with like having to walk properties. But I still need him like all the time, right? Like and even if I was right 90% of the time, like that big, like, no, we're doing drain tile and we got to update the water service here, and you just missed a 30K expense type of thing. Like I almost never pull the trigger without talking to Chris at some point.
Yeah.
So, and just talking about like exit strategies, I mentioned flipping. Let's say I get under contract with a 20 unit, something that's just going to be like insanely cash intensive for me. And I'm like, man, let's get this 100K I have here. Let's get it out to play somewhere else. I got another exit here. First off, like 585 appraisal, someone would buy this for 600K, hands down, right? The market is hot. You guys all know that. Like you put something out there at 585, it's a Redfin hot home in a day, and you're getting multiple offers. But I got another exit here. Rehab, purchase, closing costs. It's going to cost me $523 before holding. Hopefully get rid of it soon. This is really skinny. I would not do this. I wouldn't buy this as a flip, like just as a rule of thumb, guys. Like this is a really skinny deal, but it's an exit for me, right? Like it's a way for me to get out. If something big comes along and I want to pull this cash out. Not only can I pull the cash out, I can make money off of it. Again, don't take this and be like, oh, I'm going to make this. This is way too tight to take down as a flip.
I guess what would you feel more comfortable at to take it down as a flip?
So kind of a loaded question. As a rule of thumb, we usually want to be at the very least 10% the gross profit. So after all the BS, after all the holding costs, this has got to be at least 10% of what the ARV is. Like I want to see 60K here. Now, here's the other things that drive that. One, is it an area I know and a product I know? So like we'll get skinny, like in Jeff Park and Portage Park, we'll take on deals that are a little skinnier because we've done enough of them. Like we know there's a demand for them. We know how much it's going to cost. And it's just our risk factor is very, very low, right? We just know we're in a solid spot where we can sell this thing. We've done it. Boom, boom, boom. We did it down the street. The other thing is if this is a low rehab, when we're doing those 150, like if I said 60K here and you guys are going, well, that's a lot of money. When you're doing 150K rehab, 125K rehab, you got to make money. Like you're taking on a ton of risks. Like it's a big project with a lot of things that can go wrong. So like this one's kind of a bad example because we're not doing that. We're doing more of a palpable rehab. But when we buy something for like 3 and I'm going to put like 120 into it, like we got to make enough money where like after all these costs, like I'm still walking away feeling really good about it. So we have like gone way over. We've only done this one deal. I can walk through another one. I could shut up. I could answer questions. Like I'll throw the ball into your guys' court, whatever would be most beneficial.
Is there any particular questions the rest of you guys have at the moment, or does anyone think that you want to see him proceed with another one? Or?
I can listen to Tom all night, so I'm doing it.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I have a quick question, Tom. Sorry, I missed the introduction there, but you might have already said this, but where did you like learn this stuff? Like, where did you do your education? Like when you got started, how did you figure this out? Like briefly.
Like I think the easiest thing to do is just study the neighborhood, right? Like going back to what I showed up here, what are you going to get for rents? And then doing the same thing with ARVs. And if you know those data points, then it's about, all right, you have the end result. So what's the middle result, which is like the rehab and the holding costs, which can be defined, right? Like, and you can lean on other people for those. And then what's the beginning? Like where's the purchase? Right? Like that's the, and then the purchase, if you can't find, here's the next step then. Like once you guys do all this, what you're going to do is struggle to find the actual purchase price that works, right? And then that's the next step in the game is just getting involved with these wholesalers. Like this, like going back, this came across my desk 3 different times. And the fact that, and it's not because like, again, it's not because of a relationship. It's not because of a podcast. It's because of 3 public information places. Like someone here should have saw this. Someone here should have bought this building for $450. Like for what I see other buildings going for, like someone else should have came in and bought this thing.
I have one more question. Are you considering making purchases off of foreclosures considering the current scenario? Why or why not?
What was the first part of that? Making purchases what?
Through foreclosures, in foreclosures, I should say. Because considering that a lot of people might go into foreclosure, I know there are some audiences coming that might soften the blow a little bit, but we all know there'll still be people who will be losing their homes because of what happened in the pandemic. Are you considering purchasing any of those properties that are in foreclosure?
Oh yeah, and that's yes. The answer is resolving yes. And for me, like that's where we make our money. Is we like doing the big equity spreads, like the big rehabs, and like you need it to be distressed, right? Like you need it to buy it at the lowest dollar possible because no matter what, like we have an end product in mind that's going to cost us what we know it's going to cost us. So like in this example, like them having if we want to do our typical model, let's call it, going back to that column deal, it wouldn't work. Like we wouldn't give them any credit for like that kitchen they have or anything they have there. And we would still be buying at a price that justified it, right? Like my ideal was to buy that property and have like rodents in it and buy it at $350, right? Like that's like where our model is. So like the distress game is great for us. if you're not comfortable taking on a 6-figure rehab, like I don't think like foreclosures are a great answer for you. Like you're running a risk there. We buy almost everything as is. So like that's a game we play. If it works, it's great. It's profitable. It's also not something I would recommend if you're, if you own a 3-unit and you're looking to get the next one. Like it's tough. It's profitable because there's a lot of risk involved with it.
Mm.
Also, foreclosure does not mean distress too. You can buy a foreclosed building that the guy just couldn't make payments and the tenants got out and it's been vacant for a year and it could cost you $50K to get it back up and running. Right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean that it's physically distressed.
Makes sense. And what would be your advice on finding these? How would you go about looking for these?
So one, I would zone in. You'd have to know exactly the area, like I said before on the call, right? Like, so let's say you do all that and you're at that point in the game. You got to get linked in with wholesalers, and then you're still things on the MLS. And like, let's say, hey, I'm still not finding what I need. Take matters in your own hand. At that point, then I would say start doing direct mailing, start doing VAs making calls. Take this into your own hand at that point. But don't start spending money on that. Like a VA is not a magical answer. I can't find deals, so I'm going to hire a VA. You will not succeed if you don't do all of this first. That's why I'm like hammered the point home. Like, so once you do that and like you're still struggling, you still can't find deals, at that point, start pumping in some money into advertising or marketing, whatever the word is for trying to go direct. All right, so I've talked a bunch. I'm gonna fly through this next deal just to show you guys because this one was on the MLS. Now this is one I didn't take down. This does not fit my model at all, right? But after seeing on the MLS and seeing no one buy it, I actually put offer on there and be like, I'm just mad that no one else is buying this building. So let's talk through this one here. So 3457 North Avers. Look at this picture in the bottom right. This is a 4-unit, but it's a ginormous 4-unit. It's an oversized brick corner lot. You got this front building here. This front unit is like 3,000 square feet because you get this and it's duplex down. The back is duplex down as well. Obviously not as big. Like these front units are just insanely ginormous, right? So brick 4-unit in Avondale. These are the finishes. Did you guys, we had Luke Blanick on the podcast talking about Logan Square. If any of you guys listened to that episode, do you know Luke? So Luke's company was Luke's the one who had this thing listed, right? So they did the rehab, pulled all the plans, all the permits. They did the tenant screening. This is like, if you're going to do turnkey, this is truly turnkey done by somebody who literally owns like 3% of all of Logan Square, right? The guy's the real deal. I also ripped on him because him and his other agent in this picture, this is their cars to make this building like a fucking cheap commercial. We're going to park our cars in the front side of the lot here. Anyways, so this building pumps out over 100K in rent, right? It's $9,100 a month. It's a great building, corner lot, west end of Avondale. These are your finishes. It's done by somebody who has done this before, and it's sat on the market for 90 days. It's under contract now. I think it's closing next weekend. You can look it up. It's still out there. It's contingent, but like they had to wait 90 days to close this, which was earth shattering to me. And I'll tell you why in a second here. All right, 11% cash on cash might not be the greatest number in the world. Again, though, the risk in real estate for someone who's thinking more turnkey, right? If you're looking at me and saying, Tom, I can't do 150K rehab. Here's an asset that was done for you, screened for you, done by a professional. It's like the dream of a building I want, a brick corner lot, an oversized lot. Like that's great. And in the ML listing, it's got seller financing. It says seller financing is available. Right. And like everyone's complaining they don't have money and they can't take down $1 million building. And like they're saying blatantly right there, seller financing. This guy was willing to do 3.5%, 90% LTV, 30-year AM, 5-year ARM. Like that's insane. Like I don't know if anyone's like tried to do seller finance before or have seller financing opportunities. Like that is a ridiculously dumb deal by him. Like that is a very low interest rate for seller financing. And now you're also at 90% LTV. So the same as, this isn't like you're house hacking. Hey, I only got to be 3% down. But now you're talking about owning $1 million building in West Avondale, and it's going to take you 120K to do it. And maybe you don't have 120K, but could you partner with 3 other people and do 40K each, right? So like this was one that, again, why don't I own this building? Well, again, I'm looking for equity spread, right? This is not an equity spread play. Luke has done this thing to the 9s. There's not much room for me. After a while, and sitting there, I still made an offer on it because I was like, damn, 20 years from now, I'm going to have this building. And it's just a way to park cash. Put 100K in there and whatever. It's going to get you that 10K back. Like, it's not the worst place to have money sit. And it's like, I never want to use the term risk-free, but like, it's done for you. It's good. So let's just walk through it real quick. Let's say you bought it at list. Cost you 5K to close. These are easy calculations, right? No rehab, no money, just boom, closing costs. There's your seller financing, 90%.
Hey, Tom, can we zoom in again real quick? Sorry.
Yep. Sorry. So how are you making this deal work? Well, you're not creating an equity spread, but you're getting creative with financing, right? So what I'm talking about how rosy this is, but let's take a step back. What's the risk here? The risk is you're gonna have a loan of 90%, just like anyone who house hacks now. Your loan is going to be very close to what the value of the house is. So if your plan is to get out in 3 years and the market turns, you're in a bad spot. Now, if you're holding this for 10 years, 20 years, if that's the game plan and you're capitalized where you don't need to ever pull this money out, cool. This makes complete sense. But let's throw that out there. Like if you're like, oh yeah, I'd own this and I'm going to move to Miami in 5 years because I have something in my life making me do that. You could get caught here. And that's the same for any high loan to value type of scenario. So like just as like an FYI or like, keep that in the back of your pocket. But at the end of the day, man, you're into this thing for 120K and this thing just pumps out money. These are actual rents. These are not like projecting, I think I'll get this. These are tenants that they have in there that are screened. And the $2,000 one, they didn't have in there. They waited till they got under contract. So you could have house hacked this thing too. Not with an FHA, but you could have done owner financing, house hack this thing and been sitting pretty. I think one thing to call out on this one, here's an example where if you buy taxes before rehab. So right now, this thing's assessed at 600K, taxes are about 12. That's where you can get caught getting burned on taxes, right? Everyone understands like you need to bump that number. There's a public sale. They're going to see you bought it for 1.1, 1.2, whatever that number is. And they're not going to assess you. Cook County is not going to assess you at 600K anymore, right? That number is going to skyrocket. So always make sure you're accounting for that in a deal, in some sort of deal like this, where the taxes are much lower than what the assessed value is much lower than what you're purchasing for, especially if it's an MLS purchase.
Does the same concept apply for when you do an appraisal for a refinance?
Not an appraisal. That's not going to get back to the assessor in any way. You can use an appraisal to your advantage. Now, the other caveat is if you pull full plans and permits, that usually has a dollar amount to it. So like on these guts, we're usually saying, and we usually try to make it as less as possible. They could technically go back and look at the permit and be like, well, you put in 150K in the building, we're going to up it by that much. Even though it created 300K in equity, like we still might get a somewhat of a hit, but not the full hit, if that makes sense. So, for example, we buy a building for 400K. All right, here, let me do a real example. We buy a building for like 325. We got to pull full plans and permits. We put 150 into it, and someone buys it from us for 650. Right? Doesn't matter what we put into it or what we did. There's going to be a sale for 650, and at some point they're going to get assessed close to that 650 number, not the 325 number. Right? Now, let's say I held that building for whatever reason. So that's one example. It's a public record of a 650 sale. They're going to end up getting assessed there. It might take the county a year or two to get there, but at some point they're going to say, yep, that's the last sale. This is what's going on in the area. And that's going to be one of the things they use to calculate. Now, let's say it's more of the ladder, what you said, I just go to refi. I bought for 325. I put 150 in. I go to refi. They're going to note that I put 150K of value of work into it. They're not going to have any way to know 650 on the back end. They are going to take like the neighborhood and other assessed areas, but it's just like a calculation of the full area, not my individual property, like an appraisal. And they don't have the appraisal. That's with the bank. The assessor will not have, in Illinois, the Cook County assessor will not have the appraisal. You can use it to fight your taxes. You can use it to your advantage, but they do not have it off the bat. So, but anyways, like this deal isn't like a earth shattering, like, oh my God, but like, man, like for everyone scrounging to get deals out there, seller financing, be into a $1 million property for 120K, get 10% on it. Like it was there. It was there for 60 days on the MLS before it went under contract. So like maybe these returns aren't like the greatest thing in the world, but they're good, man. And this is in West Avondale. In a brick building oversized, like I take this all day long, right? Like if I didn't have my own goals and my own where I want to put my money, I'd take this all day long. And if 120K is a hard pill to swallow, you know, fine. Get 3 people to do 40.
Yeah, I'm slapping myself in the face for this one.
Man, when I put it in this presentation and I was looking at it again, I was like, I should have bought this freaking building. Just do a couple extra flips and pay for it. Like that was, should have just done this one.
Yeah.
So
does anyone have any other questions? I don't want Tom to have to talk for like, I don't know, another really long time. I do appreciate it. It's been awesome. I've learned a lot. But does anyone have any like last questions or any questions on this one specifically?
let me show one more thing real quick.
All right.
So here, we ran a model. Here's the IRR, right? The nice with these big buildings too. Another man, the loan gets paid off by a bigger chunk, which is just math, right? It's a bigger amount, right? The principal being paid down every month is when you talk about tangible dollars, it's a big number. I then ran this thing. So here's like your spread after 5 years if you get 3% a year. Plus on top of that, you're getting this thing every month. Or every year. You're not getting this every month. That'd be awesome. Here's an example. The market tanks 10% in the first year. So you're in a property worth 1,175. It goes down 10% in the first year. That's a big chunk. That's happened like once, right? That was 08. And they go lower than that in 08. But properties usually don't drop that much. Still, even after that, if you just clawed your way back from that lower number, not from your original number, but then clawed your way back from that base number, didn't appreciate the next year, didn't appreciate the next year. So 3 years into this, you're underwater still from your original purchase. And then you finally start getting a little baby appreciation. You're still 200K positive 5 years later. Plus you got paid 40, whatever this is, 30, 43, 50. So 50K, another 190, 220 on your original 120 investment. I mean, that's assuming the downturn and no appreciation. Like this is, I don't want to say we can get more conservative because like we don't know what can happen, but this is pretty freaking conservative. You're still coming out pretty, if you have a longer view horizon, you're coming out pretty good here. Like this is, your 125 is now 191, which isn't, let's be honest, right? Like, I don't think we'd all be happy with that number, like just as a normal investment. But if things hit the fan, you're into it for that, you're still here and you still got paid that whole time. Like there's like no other, because of leverage, there's like no other investment where you can do that if things hit the fan, right? If you have a stock worth 100K and things hit the fan, at best, maybe you claw back to that 100K, right? Like you know, so I tried to get this point across the other one. I actually ran the model on this one, which is why I wanted to show it. So that's what I got. That's, I know I went like way over, guys. but yeah, I wanted to show like realistic deals that are out there. Like they're there. These are the three things just that I said from before, like just take action. Like you might not know like the end results. So start to define that and start to think about what are the easy tasks you can do from day one, right? Just get started on it. Like don't worry about like, oh, is my spreadsheet this? It should be that. Just do it. Like you can iterate on it. You can ask other people's questions. You guys have this group. You can talk to each other. Like just get started. Just do it. And maybe you don't make a purchase for the next 6 months because you get outbid on everything. It doesn't matter. Like you're getting that knowledge, you're getting everything. Like you're establishing that foundation where it becomes a huge asset. So when something comes across your desk, you can say yes. So that's what I got. Sorry, I went like way over. Here's my info. And you guys know how to hunt me down. Appreciate everyone who listens to the podcast, and hopefully this was valuable.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much.
That was amazing. Thank you
It
so
was
much.
Really great.